Hi, everyone. It's Brittany from the Learning to Love Math podcast. I'm so glad that you're here today. Today is going to be a little bit different. So this is the first in a series of episodes where I'm going to be interviewing other TPT sellers, other math teachers, and really sharing their perspective on these things because I already know what I think and feel. You guys probably do by now as well. But I just find this so fascinating because everyone brings a rich history and experience to their teaching. So this is the first in that series, and today I am interviewing Lauren. Is it Doughty? Sorry, you just told me and I already forgot.
Yes, Daughty.
Okay, Lauren Doughty. She's a teacher, girl mom, and the TPT seller behind Managing Middle Math. She creates resources for teachers to help them create authentic learning experiences for students that engage them in math content. So obviously, I'm so excited to hear from her. Welcome, Lauren.
Yes, thank you. So excited to be on here.
Yay, I'm so excited to hear. I'm also excited to hear the answers to these questions. And hopefully, so you guys have probably noticed that I talk really fast. When I'm by myself, I can usually slow it down a bit easier, but I get so excited when I'm talking to other people. So hopefully I won't go too fast for you, but if I do, you can just click that little gear button and slow me down to like 0.5. So hopefully you don't have to. But Lauren, I would just love it if you would just share like, what is your story up until now? Like your story with teaching and like the TPT seller, like, because usually it's this journey, right? People don't usually start both at the same time. Maybe you did, I actually don't know. So tell us, what's your story there?
I grew up with two parents as teachers, and my older brother is actually a teacher as well. My sister's the black sheep of the family. She's a doctor or becoming a doctor right now. So we like to poke fun of her a little bit. I didn't really want to go into teaching originally. And it wasn't until my sophomore year in high school when I got to work with a group of second graders as an opportunity that I found out that, okay, maybe teaching is actually going to be my calling. And I was really excited about that. And I actually didn't want to teach math at first. I was wanting to do something more with like business accounting, not something specifically math. But then when I got to my senior year in high school, I had a really great calculus teacher who showed me that I could have this love of math, that I wasn't just, it wasn't just these steps that I could be good at and follow, but the actual understanding behind the math that I was doing. And I loved that opportunity and being able to break that down and kind of understand that. And so that kind of brought me into math teaching. And so I was very excited to be able to have that opportunity, especially growing up with educators as parents. I grew to love and respect the profession and to be able to be a part of it. And now that I'm in my 6th year of teaching this year, I can't imagine doing anything else.
That is so sweet. I love interviewing people who are just so excited to be a teacher, and you guys can't see it because you're only hearing, but she just has the biggest smile and she's just so genuinely happy. I'm sure your students love you. Lauren, so it says your whole title is managing middle math, right? So which grades do you teach?
So my first year teaching, I taught just 5th grade math, and I was at a 5 through 8 middle school. And then my next couple years, I was teaching 8th grade math, algebra, and then just regular 8th grade math at several different school districts. And then this is my 2nd year teaching at the same district, 5th grade math again at an elementary school. But I still consider the 5 through 8 to be the kind of that middle section of math. And I really enjoy the different groups of kids that I've been able to have. I think I really enjoy like the 5th grade content a lot. And then like when I get more into that 8th grade group, I love like the sassiness that you can get from those kids. I love the banter back and forth. So I think like middle level definitely has like
That's so awesome. So I teach third, fourth, and well, now I teach K-5 because I'm a STEAM teacher. That was a new development this year. But I have a special place in my heart for 4th and 5th grade because that's what I taught for the last 4 years. And I have to say, like, it seems like with middle school, at least, it's kind of polarized, right? It's like either you love middle school and you're all about it and you love the sarcasm and the sass, or you hear teachers like, oh my gosh, God bless you, I could never do that. So it's so interesting because you don't really hear that as much, I feel, with the elementary. So I do think that's super interesting that you're focusing on middle. I think that's a great niche. And I think it's a niche an area that doesn't get a lot of love because there are a ton of resources for primary students and elementary students, and she's nodding her head. And even high school students are getting up there now. So middle is definitely like a place like where people need more of that. So that's awesome. So you said you didn't always want to teach math. I just want to add something in there. So the whole reason behind this podcast was because I've had this journey of becoming a person who would have never said they were a math person. And even now, I don't really believe in the whole math person, not a math person thing, but I get it if that's where you're at, that I'm not really a fan of math. I like languages, or I like writing, or I like reading. Personally, I think you can like it all. You don't have to just pick one. You can like it all. And that's one of the cool things about at least being a teacher. Like if you teach all subjects, you get to kind of explore all of those. But really the point of this podcast is helping teachers learn how to love math, like, learn how to love teaching math, and then also helping the students learn how to love math. So I would love to hear, so you were talking about business and accounting. So can you just kind of talk about, like you said, the calculus teacher made an impact on you. What was the switch where you were like, okay, this is something that's really cool and enjoyable for me?
So I was a student that, surprise, surprise, I always tell my kids at the beginning of the year, felt like I struggled with math. I was always in like the accelerated or like the higher level classes, but I always felt like it was a chore that I had to memorize and be able to get those facts. And always felt like my memory was something I really struggled with as a student growing up, like memorizing facts for any class, whether it was like social studies class, trying to memorize dates and different things. It was just something that I always struggled with. And when I got to meet this calculus teacher in high school, she actually inspired me to go to the college that I went to as well, which was super exciting. I felt like I could ask her like the quote unquote dumb questions or the silly questions. And it would be like, I don't want to just know how to get from point A to B. I want to know all the messiness that's in it so I can really understand what I'm doing in your class. And my dad worked at the same high school that I went to. And so we would get to school early and I'd be like, okay, so can I go see my calculus teacher now? Like school hasn't started yet. And I know she's here because you guys all get here. So I can go ask her more questions. And then I get to the end of the day and I go tell my dad, I was like, okay, so I know you still have this much time contractually that you have to be here. So can I go see my calculus teacher and go ask her more questions? And she was just always so patient with me. And I just felt like if she can take what we're learning, like calculus, something that's just like so abstract at times, and be able to teach it to me, I feel like I can take something like math and I can be able to work with other kids and make them really enjoy it. Because she always had like different fun things that in her class that she would talk about to help us remember different things. Like I remember when we couldn't apply the theorem, we called it cat. And so on our test, we would draw pictures of cats when we couldn't apply the theorem for different problems. And I was like, what a fun way to be able to do something like that. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to be that fun teacher. And when I was in my student teaching, that's when the kind of that love and that creating of those experiences for students in my classroom began to grow.
That is awesome. And I really wanted you to share that because I think that, and I just posted about this the other day, and that was like that post went viral and blew up. And I think like it can be really hard when we're in the day-to-day thick of it to think that what we're doing actually matters or that it's helping, or like, especially when you're doing fundamental stuff, because you're like, does it really matter if the kids know their multiplication facts for 3s and 4s? And it's like, long term, yes, it's going to help them out to learn them now, but it can be really discouraging to think like, is this even sticking? Is it helping? And a lot of times we don't see the fruit until 10 to 20 years later, which is so sad to say, but it's true, right?
All about planting those seeds.
Yeah. Did you ever go back to your calculus teacher and let them know like, hey, I love math now? Or did you ever tell them?
Yes. So since she works with my dad because he's a teacher, we're friends on Facebook. And she actually has kids around my age, which is interesting. Like, growing up, I was like, thinking the teacher was always like so much older, but I realized that she was younger. And so we have kids that are the same age. So we'll like comment on each other's photos, and I'll send her different messages too, and let her know. And even through college, if I had a college math course that I was taking, I'd be like, hey, I don't understand how to do this. I remember I bought this whiteboard that I would carry around with me, and I'd take pictures on my MacBook because I thought that was so cool, photo booth on my MacBook. And I would take pictures and send them to her. I'd be like, I don't understand how to do this. You're going to have to tell me how I'm supposed to describe this class. and she would take her time, bless her, and go through those problems with me. So she's someone that I still communicate with pretty often.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm so glad that you went to her because I think like it, I mean, that's just like, I also think like every teacher should go back to their teachers if they can, if they're still alive, and just let them know like, thank you, because that can really make someone's day or year.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah. And so I just want to let you know, like encouraging anyone who's listening, that might happen for you. Maybe it's already happened, but if it hasn't yet, just know like that could happen in the future. And that's why like the day in, day out of what we do, even if it feels mundane or hard, because it is hard, it really does make a difference over time, especially with math, because math really builds on each other, right? It's like no matter what you're learning, it's built upon concepts you've already learned. So that's awesome. Okay, so speaking of teaching and learning math, so I kind of mentioned this already. I said that you're a big fan of creating authentic learning experiences for students. I saw that and I had a big cheesy smile because my undergraduate degree is actually in Parks and Recreation Management, which is completely different from what I do now, except for the experiential learning process. That degree was really interesting because we would lead kids through things that were really scary to them, like taking their first hike in the woods to hiking at night, going down to the ocean, things that were physically very challenging for them. And so we would have them reflect on their learning afterwards, which is what experiential learning is all about. So not just on the experience, but okay, so what did you learn from that, and how is that learning going to apply to real life? How can you use this? And so kind of a reflective learning. But it was cool because then they could use that in the future. Like kids could go and feel more empowered to do that. So I'm excited to hear what you do for math to make that authentic and learning for them for math content. So what does, kind of threefold question, what does that look like for you? Like what does authentic learning look like? And how can teachers do more of it? And what do you think is at risk or at stake if we don't do that? So we can go one piece at a time if you'd like. So we'll start with, what does that look like for you?
Okay. So authentic experiences for me is all about providing that environment for students to be able to engage with the content that you have in your class. For me, it's math, but whatever kind of content you're teaching in your class, and allow them to have that real life application with it. Because I feel like when you provide those experiences for students, if I'm in something and I'm doing it, I'm listening, I'm looking, I'm hearing, I mean, you can get all the senses in here. But if I'm experiencing that, I'm more likely to remember. And as teachers, we want our students to be able to retain that content because, just coming from a math perspective, we're building on that math content. We have that scaffolding there. So that way we can build on those concepts later in the year. That's super important for them. And I feel like if I'm going to take the time to be able to teach a certain topic to my students, I want to make it worthwhile for them. I want it to make it worthwhile for me because I want it to be fun and engaging for me to be able to be teaching to them. Because if I can come off that I really enjoy what I'm teaching, and I do, I love what I'm teaching, they're going to be feeding off that as well. I just think that the more that I can provide those experiences for students, I mean, that provides so many different opportunities. Like it provides them opportunities to see the content, provides us opportunities, student to teacher and student to student, for us to build connections within the classroom. So that helps out with like classroom management as well. And then it also allows for kind of that community piece as well, which I can talk about a little bit too, of how I bring up some community partners into my classroom and allow students to see that their community cares about them. And there are lots of different components to what community is and different parts of the community, but it also kind of brings the community that you already have together too. Like as a school, with one of the projects that I'm currently doing, I just constantly have more teachers and students stopping by the classroom to be able to check up to see like, what are we doing in math class today? What are we connecting with? And it just feels like everybody's a part of that. And so I love that part.
I had to look at, so I didn't mean to look down and away from you. I was looking at my Instagram because I was like, I think I was talking to her about the Starbucks thing. And that got me, yes. And that got me super excited because especially like if I'm thinking from like my upper elementary brain, concepts like place value are super abstract and hard to teach. And usually that involves like reiteration throughout the year, and reintroducing it and reinforcing it. But I really like this because using things like entrepreneurship and small business, and those are ways to help students really understand it, because then they can build an understanding of money. So I love what you've done with that. Can you talk a little bit about what you've done with the coffee and Starbucks projects?
Sure. So at the beginning of the year, we did place value. We did more of like a construction thing because we were building numbers together. And so this next unit that we had, I was trying to think of something with multiplying whole numbers that we were going to be doing. So I was like, like do something with a community partner like a Starbucks or something like that, because we have so many in our surrounding area. I was like, that would be so cool. But I was like, oh, that's money, decimals. I'm not really sure about that. And then I got thinking about like actually building the business. And I was like, I could take whole numbers and we could talk about quantities and inventory, and we could talk about salaries with that too, and talk about wages and different things. And I was like, I could build something with that. And so I thought about what I had done in a previous unit last year. We had partnered with a bank in town, and they had provided like checkbooks and stuff like that. And so that was our adding and subtracting decimal unit. So I was like, okay, how do I go to something like Starbucks and say, hey, I am a small town school math classroom. Would you be interested in partnering with something like this? And so I thought about all the different Starbucks that we had in the area. And we actually have a Hy-Vee that has a Starbucks in it. And our Hy-Vee is, employee owned. And so I went to that. And I was like, these are going to be my people. If I can find someone that's going to be my people to help out my classroom, this is what's going to be. And they were so nice. The Starbucks manager that I actually like worked with, she was like, oh, this is such a cool idea that you're going to like teach kids like how to start their own business almost, and kind of see like how much money you're going to be starting with and the different things that it requires to be able to purchase and get a coffee shop running. She's like, I love that idea. So I talked with her, and they were able to donate Starbucks coffee cups and lids and stuff like that for the kids. And we had talked about a couple other things as well. And they ended up saying, if you want to go and like do like a field trip to come and see like Starbucks, like we'll do like hot chocolate for your 10-year-old, because coffee and 10-year-olds should just not go together, people.
For sure.
And unfortunately, because of COVID restrictions, we weren't able to go and do that. But like the thought that was there and the love that was coming from that community partner was so great. And the kids felt that when I was like talking with them about that. So we were able to start this idea. So then I was like, okay, so what does it take to build a Starbucks within the classroom? So we got aprons, and I got on my Procreate app, and I made our logo for our classroom that we could have, and different things like we have punch cards for rewards and different things in the classroom as well. And the kids were just so excited about it. And I got some gift cards too. So they've got like a raffle that they can do for that as well. But it's all about just taking different parts of multiplying whole numbers. We're building with baby steps, like 2x1 and then 3x1. And so they'll talk about, how many chairs and booths and stuff like that we're going to be building. And then they'll go on and they're like, okay, so we got to create our logo and menus and more of the layout. So it kind of brings that artistic component in. So we're trying to go cross content here. And then later on, it'll get more in depth, and students will be talking about, okay, so what day-to-day life looks like. So purchasing like coffee and actually serving people, like what that's going to look like on a weekly basis, like how much our expense is going to be, how much revenue we're bringing in, what it costs to be able to have a salary for yourself, as well as paying your employees. And there's just lots of different components in it that I'm super excited about. We're doing some error analysis with some receipts. My kids are very excited about a Karen problem coming in, that typical quote unquote Karen. What happens when something isn't charged correctly and you have to speak with the manager. So we're going to be talking about that as well. So they are, as they say every day, we're excited to come into work today, Mrs. Doughty. They grab their apron and they put it on, and they have like their own assigned one. And it's a great work environment. We do the coffee themed work environment where it's, we're working with others, but we have that low level music going on in the background too. And it's just this collective learning community where I can kind of just sit back and I look and I'm like, look at it all. I'm just so excited about it. Like kids are working together, they're enjoying what they're doing. And it's just been a huge shift and what I've had in previous classrooms that I've even taught myself when I started to apply these authentic experiences for students to engage with the content. They are just so much more happy to be in a math class. Like I find that my math anxiety students, like their anxiety is so much lower because they're being able to, they're dressing up, they're looking the part, like they feel good, they look good, and they're going in confident into classes, and everybody's kind of working together on different things. And it's just been a huge shift in the way that my kids have looked at the classroom, as well as how the community and our schools looked at the classroom, and how we can be able to provide those opportunities for students to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, I love that so much. You guys couldn't hear me. I tried to mute myself when other people are talking just so you don't get the feedback. But I was like, oh yeah, cool, cute. I love that. But yeah, totally. And I think it's so many things there. I love using money to teach place value. I actually just did a whole like unit about that because I think it's one of the best ways. And not even just for place value, it's also just the experience of, as silly as it sounds, kids seeing a $20 bill, seeing a $50 bill, seeing a $100 bill, holding it in their hands. It becomes more interesting and real to them. And what you've really done with that unit, not just working with a community partner, which is really modeling an awesome thing in itself, because they can do that in the future with whatever job they have. They can, collaborate with other partners, but then also like they could go and apply to a food, like a fast food place or even Starbucks in high school and say, I actually have some experience with this already. And as silly as that would sounds to us, if you have to think from like an employer standpoint, you're looking at all these applications and you're like, wait, what? And so the kid can say, oh yeah, we practice this. And even like if that's so memorable for them and so helpful, and they can actually apply that learning, that it makes sense that the kids were excited to come in, and it's kind of got an element of play in there, right? Like, wouldn't you want to have fun with it?
Yeah.
And I'm such a huge fan of that. I'm a fan of anything that makes it not only more fun for the kids, but also easier and more fun for the teacher. Because I mean, we all know that if we go into work and we're not feeling it, we don't feel like being there, we're not having a good time, the kids aren't going to have a good time. So it's important, it's vital for us to have fun at work.
Sure.
So
Something as simple as like, going back to like the employer thing, learning to put on an apron.
oh yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, for sure.
So, especially since, they're 10 and 11-year-olds that I have in my fifth grade classroom, putting on the aprons that I purchased were more adult size. And so, learning to fold the apron under so it fits perfectly, how to tie the back of the apron so that way it sits up a little bit higher. That in itself has been a life skill with these kids. So, being able to know how to do that if they were to go and apply for a job, let's say at Starbucks, like they've already got that. Like, I've got that taken care of. They're going to look good for the job.
I love that. And also, I think sometimes we discount the need to develop fine motor skills in like upper elementary and middle school, but they actually still need that too, especially because kids are usually more sedentary now. It's just kind of how it is, especially with the pandemic. A lot of kids are in their house. So also being able to use those fine motor skills is like super important. So I want to say, like, as a former recovering slacker teacher, I would hear what you just said and I'd be like, that sounds amazing, but that sounds like a lot of work. I don't know how. I'm trying to think like of how someone else might think, like, how am I going to get in touch with Starbucks? I'm teaching, like one of the managers are there. How am I going to like plan out a whole unit? So if someone wants to do that, like in their heart of hearts, they want to, but they're overwhelmed by honestly the logistics of it, what would you recommend for them? Like, how could they get support with that? Or like, do you have any resources that could support them in that?
Yeah, so I actually did my first ever conference. It was virtual this summer, and I wrote like this step-by-step planning guide on how to create an authentic experience for your classroom. I have it with like different like notes that are on there that you can take of what steps you're going to take, like what are your community partners, what are your materials. So it helps you be able to plan all this out, even gives you little reminders that don't forget to write those thank you notes, because it's all about building those relationships. And so I've got that available on my teaching as well. But I really just think like if you go into something wanting to plan like this authentic experience for your students, just have the goal in mind of I want my students to enjoy what they're learning. And if that's your heart of heart goals behind creating something like this, your students are going to see that, and that's going to be easy to create for you. As far as like connecting with community partners, just think about like who's in your area, like who do your students go and visit, or maybe who do your students not go and visit as much, and you want to bring more awareness to that group. And so I think to myself, like my students, my 10 and 11-year-olds, a lot of them, while I don't agree that they should be drinking coffee, go to Starbucks a lot more often than they probably should. And so we have a lot of those around the area. And it was as simple as me walking into the store and saying, hi, this is who I am. I'm from this school. Would you be interested in partnering with me? That's it. That's as simple as it was. I've done other ones where I've talked on the phone, and sometimes I'll write myself little notes about getting ready to call them just so I have like an idea in mind. But I find that a lot of community partners that I have with my classroom so far have been so excited to partner with a classroom, and especially with such a young group of students, that they're willing to work with you on getting you what you need, especially with teachers, because we just work so hard at what we're doing and we help shape so many future careers in so many different directions. They're like, what can I do to help you? And it just is, it's an overwhelming amount of support that you find when you reach out and ask for some help like that for your classroom.
That is awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm like, I think that was the thing that excited me most when I was scrolling through your Instagram. I was like, that is so cute. And I love when students can learn something. And then when they go to Starbucks, they're going to think of that, right? They have an association that reinforces the learning. So that is so cool. So there's resources that you have in your Teachers Pay Teachers store. It also sounds like if they follow you, they'll get ideas. I mean, actually, I will attest to that. Go follow her so you can get the ideas. What do you think is at risk? Because there are some teachers also who might be listening to this who are, I mean, like I said, they could just be feeling overwhelmed. And like, I totally get that if that's where they're at, because it's a lot, you know, like if you're really going to plan, you really do have to think in advance. You have to plan, you have to have the materials, right? But I think it's really important for them to know like what the alternative is. So what do you think is at risk when we don't do that? Like when we stick to whatever curriculum we have in our textbooks, or when we stick to more maybe traditional direct instruction, what do you think we're risking or we're putting at stake when we don't include those kinds of experiences?
I feel like, because I'm thinking about, more because I've been living in this pandemic classroom the past 2 years, I feel like all of our teacher brains are such like so focused on this, and we kind of don't remember the before sometimes. But when we aren't providing those experiences for our students, I feel like our kids are missing out, or some of our kids are missing out completely with just the different styles of teaching that we can be providing our students, just like we have different styles of learners. And so it's important to be able to provide opportunities for those students to learn differently, to connect with what you're teaching in your classroom. Because if they're not connecting with it, and they're not going to be retaining it, and they're going to be missing those building blocks that they need to have, not only in your classroom, but in future classrooms as well. And when we provide those experiences where they're able to be present in the moment and have memories and be able to engage all of those senses and different things, I just think that students are able to go forth and create so much more. They're able to synthesize that information so much more and be able to do so much more with the content, and not only just learn the content, but then expand upon it. And that's something I've been working on a lot more this year in my classroom, is not just meeting my quote unquote cookie cutter students, but how am I meeting my students who maybe are a little bit lower with their math skills, or maybe some of my special ed students that I have that are in my classroom. Also, how am I meeting my higher level students' needs and making sure that they're engaged with the content, that they're not becoming bored, and that they're also being able to take what they're learning, because they may get that really quickly, and apply it to something else. And so that's something that I did a lot of workshops with this summer. In addition to what I'm doing with the authentic experiences in my classroom, I ended up taking my whole teaching style and shifting it this summer as well. And so that has been a huge change too. And I think that my students have really come to love the style of teaching that we've had in the classroom this year with these different experiences, because it's fun for them. Like that chance of play and being able to almost, I mean, I feel like the kids are coming in, they're putting on the apron, but I feel like they're taking off this other stress when they come into the classroom. Really feel like it's okay to be a kid in the classroom. I'm not just sitting at my desk and opening up a workbook page to this page. I'm doing activities that are exciting, and there are different ways to do activities. It's not just a worksheet. I'm getting up, I'm working with other students in the classroom. I'm not always relying on that teacher. And I feel like this year more than ever, I've been able to have that opportunity to sit back and like watch a little bit. And I've enjoyed that, where I'm like, I'm not the necessary piece in my classroom. I'm not the end all be all for my students. They're developing those skills of advocacy, where they're advocating for themselves. If they have a question, they're going to another student, or they are coming to me, which is great too. But I just feel like this pressure is taken off when they enter the classroom, when we have those experiences for them. It's not just sit and get anymore. It's, oh, I can do this. And if I don't understand how to do this, I can find someone in my classroom that's going to help me how to do that, whether that's a teacher or another student. I think that's just a great opportunity for them this year.
So many good like nuggets in there. I wish I would have written all the things I was thinking of down. So I was like, oh, that makes me think of this. But one of the things you said that like, it's not just them sitting and getting, or it's not just them coming in and expecting to receive from you. I think that's something that's so hard to get out of, because we don't realize that we're doing that, like that we're basically reinforcing learned helplessness, or that we're making ourselves the focal point, and we don't even realize it. Like I have to even, just when talking with adults, I'm like, I'm trying not to dominate this conversation, right? I have to think about it. And I think that's good for adults to do. It's a self-awareness practice, but it's harder with kids because you also kind of are you are the authority, you are running the show, right? You're coordinating it. So that can be a really hard thing to practice. But I absolutely agree, when students are running the learning, that does make it authentic because they're actually doing it. And the fact that they come in and put on the aprons, I mean, that also kind of makes it fun. Like you have some kind of little spark, like, oh, this is what we're doing today. It gets them excited. And when people are excited or curious or surprised, they're more engaged and more ready to learn. So I wish I could have gotten a picture of your kids when you announced that you're doing it. I bet they're probably like, oh, like, big eyes and big mouths. I love that.
Yes, they thought that they were going to have like an actual Starbucks barista come in and serve them coffee every day. And so I had to say, okay, so let's think about this a little bit differently and how we're going to use this. I was like, I would love a Starbucks barista to follow me around all the time. I think that would be great. I don't know if that would do well for my sleep schedule or anything like that, but that would be a lot of fun. But once they heard the idea and how that was working, they thought that was really cool. And allows that student buy-in as well too, where I have students now coming up to me and be like, hey, so like what else are we learning in fifth grade this year? Because maybe I could think of some ideas of like what we could bring into the classroom and stuff like that. And I'm like, I love that idea. I think that's great. Send me all the ideas.
I love that. That's when like, okay, I'm doing something right. Like when they're excited about it and they're excited to learn other things. Mm-hmm. And that also shows like, I'm also thinking of the socio-emotional learning part of that, because I think that's really intertwined with any kind of subject, but especially math, because a lot of students will already come in with stress, anxiety, and trauma around learning math. Yeah. And I think that I honestly think teachers have that a lot of times. And that's why we say, I'm not a math person, because it's our way of keeping ourselves safe by not even like refusing to deal with it. Right. Mm-hmm. I know I was definitely that way the first couple of years of teaching. In fact, we actually departmentalized, which was great for me for fun reading and social studies stuff. But then I realized I'm like, this is actually not helping me become a better teacher, because I'm just avoiding something that I'm scared of, or that I feel uncomfortable with it. And that's not really a good lesson to I feel hypocritical doing that if I'm telling my students they have to do things that make them uncomfortable. And so I just like committed. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. And I'm still like always improving. I don't want anyone to think, oh, okay, Brittany is an expert mathematician. I don't have a PhD. I don't have a master's degree. I try to be super transparent about that. But my hope is that anyone who's listening to that realizes that you don't have to go do that to make math engaging and fun for your students and to teach effectively. Like you can read, you can learn from other teachers. Oh my gosh, YouTube. I mean, YouTube is this wealth of information. You can watch teachers in the classroom, really so many amazing resources. So yeah, and I agree with you. If we don't do it, we're missing so many kids. And I would even say not just students who we might call lower struggling, but students who are gifted too. I mean, I see a big problem at our school. It's not intentional, but a lot of times we do what's called teach in the middle. I'm putting that in quotes, teach in the middle. And so we also have a whole bunch of disengaged students who actually could perform much higher and they could get a much richer experience, but we're robbing them of that. And I don't think we're trying to. Obviously, we're not doing that intentionally, but we're not giving them opportunities to really be challenged. And when students are challenged, they perform better, not when they're overwhelmed, mm-hmm. but when they're challenged, they perform better. So that's really cool. And I love that you did it with something that's relatable, something that they're already doing. So props on that. And do you have a resource to walk teachers through the process of doing that? I know you can't use Starbucks as trademark, but like a coffee shop.
My my logo for my classroom is called Espressotions because we're dealing with.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
So I laughed about it. Some of my kids laughed about it and thought that was funny. Others looked at me like, "You gotta be kidding, Mrs. Doughty, like seriously." And I was like, "It's funny." It was like, it relates it to coffee. I think it's great. So I actually have been uploading slowly but surely different resources of what I've been using in the classroom to my teachers page that is that coffee theme. So anything that I'll be using during this unit, I'll be uploading with that. And then I'll also upload like kind of my plan of how I went through it and taught it with the kids as well. So I've been doing little tidbits, a little bit at a time, for everybody to be able to get a taste of what it looks like. And then hold on, lost my train of thought here. And then just like as far as like getting the experiences going, like I said earlier, I have that creating authentic experiences page or book that I have on my teachers page as well, that kind of goes through step by step and kind of provides you with some note-taking lists where you can go through doing something that maybe isn't coffee related or maybe isn't math related if we have some non-math teachers listening today too, because you can do this in any type of classroom.
Totally. And I forgot to say this earlier, but also that's a very like awesome way to think outside of the box, because I think a lot of times teachers like we're very used to not having what we need, like kind of being resource poor, time poor, there's never enough of anything. And so instead of thinking like, oh, I can't do this, I don't have time or whatever, instead flipping it around and saying, okay, what do I need to do in order to make this possible? And I think that's a better question, and we get better results when we ask those kinds of questions. So that's awesome that you did that. Just to give another example, she was saying it doesn't have to be like math. I was doing a science unit for fourth grade, and we were learning about the parts of a plant. And I went to Home Depot and I was like, I am not spending $200 on this. I'm like, there's gotta be a better way. And so I went to this awesome, actually it was a coffee shop, but also a flower store. And so I asked, like, do you guys have any, like, what do you do with your old flowers? Like, I'll take dead ones. I just need to dissect them with the students. And she's like, oh, here's a whole bunch of roses I didn't sell. And I'm like, great. So perfect. And so it really can be that easy. And with anything, like you might have some libraries that need to discard books so they can get new inventory in. That's a great way to get books in your classroom. I'm trying to think, places like Home Depot or grocery stores would be willing to donate cardboard. Those are great for STEM challenges. I just love that. Like if you go outside of the box and think of who are some community partners around and how can they help, or even just going to them and saying, hey, do you have any way that you'd like to help? Like maybe they already have something that they'd like to offer.
Yeah, so I talk about all those different types of community partners in my Creating Authentic Experiences book, because it's not just, the big names like Starbucks or, other names that are out there that are like that. I went to one place, was a hospital, to be able to do a fraction surgery. And that was something that really got my spark going with this kind of experience. And that was, with my student teaching experience. Actually, if you don't follow Ray Hewitt or Teach Better Team, you need to follow them because that's who I got all of my experience from. I did some student teaching with her. And she did a surgery in her classroom, and the local hospital donated Band-Aids and masks before masks were a thing that kids were wearing, and gloves and stuff like that, and lots of other cool things to the classroom to make it really authentic for them. So I did something similar my first year teaching, and I actually just kind of sent an email out to parents, and one of the parents found out about it, and they're like, oh my gosh, I have 30 children's size lab coats that I was just getting ready to get rid of. And I'm like, I'm your girl. Like I will take those off your hands. And so the kids got to dress up like that. And we had supplies donated to the classroom for our surgery. And then you have this community of teachers. Teachers are notorious hoarders. Like they have everything. Like if you need a popsicle stick, I guarantee you there is a teacher in your building, even if you're a secondary teacher, that has popsicle sticks in their classroom somewhere. And so reaching out to that teacher community and asking them for supplies, because who doesn't love to share with the teacher down the hallway or have something they just want to get rid of that they could donate to your classroom that way. And then you have, your parents and your students when you're hyping up a lesson that you're going to be doing. I was just talking about the idea of doing a coffee theme in my classroom, and my teacher next door was like, oh, I have a Keurig in my room if you want to use it. And I was like, that's so nice of you to offer that for my students. I was like, I actually have one at home, but if I need another one because things go really well, like I know where to go for that now. So you've got those partners as well. And then you have, your community partners that you have that are out there. You've got like your PTOs and stuff like that, because some people have, your classroom budget. So there's way to save money that way. There's lots of stores that do teacher discounts as well, and have coupons and different things. And then I know a lot of people have been doing like clear the list with Amazon this year. That's been a big thing. And then just going and walking into some place or calling them. I've called people while I'm driving, like I have my phone on speaker and I'm just like, well, we're going to see how this goes. I'm on my way from like one thing to another, like an appointment or something like that. And I'll just call and ask. And I'm just like, hey, I'm looking to connect to someone that's in your community outreach and wanting to figure out if we can develop some sort of relationship between you and the classroom. And that's how my banking project got started. Last year, we were actually supposed to have our local TV station come and do like a big story on it. And unfortunately, they weren't able to come due to like some court case that ended up popping up. That was like a big hype kind of thing. Yeah, I know. And so they were doing that, but we're hoping to have them back this year. And then our local paper published the story about how kids were learning how to move out of their parents' house and, open a banking account and being able to go and make purchases. And we had a lot of fun with talking about real life things like, one of my favorites was going to Walmart and purchasing groceries. And then the next like line of the checkbook register was you were in line at Chick-fil-A with the groceries still in the back of your car purchasing dinner for that evening. I was like, I've done that many times where I purchased food and had the groceries still on the back. And so we talk about whether that or not that's like a good life choice and different things. Lots of different discussions you can get into with these authentic experiences with kids that make it real for them, and those skills that they develop outside of the content as well are something that they carry with them for a lifetime, which is super important.
And I love that when you do authentic learning experiences, it's really easy to do interdisciplinary teaching too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because then you're talking about like what's a want versus a need. And, and you can talk about like time management. I mean, yeah,
Writing
really,
in cursive,
yeah,
signing a check. Mm-hmm.
I know I actually just put a check writing activity up on TPT, and I almost didn't do it because I was like, students aren't really using, I'm 33. I've only personally written a check 3 times.
Wow.
And that is, I know, which is weird, but only when I've had to basically like put a down payment for an apartment or something.
Sure.
But you know what? It's better to have experience and then do it once than 3 times than to not have any experience. And it's a great lesson for place value too.
Yes.
So that's awesome. So I would love to hear a little bit about your TPT store before we wrap it up. What made you decide? So obviously you're passionate about this teaching in the classroom. You use all of these resources in your own classroom. What made you decide to be a TPT seller on top of being a teacher who is obviously very crazy involved and well planned?
So I actually had been watching some different Instagram accounts, and I had started a teachers page, and I had maybe 2 resources that were on it, and it wasn't doing anything. I maybe sold 1, 2 different things over 3 years, probably is what it was, if I'm remembering when I started the account correctly. And I actually got involved with some other Instagram accounts and met some people, which I just love that community of teachers on Instagram. They are just so awesome. And started learning more about how to open that store through Thriving Teacher Academy, which I joined. And I learned how to make all these awesome resources and be able to bounce ideas off of other teachers. And that's when I found that with the right resources and a lot of free ones like apps and different things, and even just having tutorials of how to do something, that I could, share what I was doing in my classroom with other teachers. So that's when I sat down and I was like, okay, what do I want from my Teachers Pay Teacher store? I want it to be able to provide opportunities for other teachers to do experiences like I'm doing in my classroom. It's an opportunity for me to have a creative outlet, okay, which is super important to me, because between going and teaching at school, there's lots of things involved being a teacher. Then I'm at home being a mom, and I was like, I want something that I can sit down and just kind of have as like a stress relief as well. So that creative outlet for me. And so I found lots of different ways to be able to do that. And it also helped me grow as a teacher as well, because when I became connected with all of those other teachers and learned how to make all of these different things for my store, it was like, oh, I can now provide that kind of activity for a student, where before I had more of like a worksheet and that kind of activity. So it's helped me to grow as a teacher and transform my teaching. And my former students last year will attest to that, because when they walked by and saw the Starbucks unit that was not in my classroom last year, they're like, why didn't you do this for us? Like, why didn't you think of it then? I was like, guys, it's called growth. I was like, I grew over the summer, just like you guys grew over the summer in my classroom last year. And so my now sixth graders looked at me and they're like, oh, that makes sense. Like, you're not just going to teach the same thing every year. It's like you're growing as a teacher, just like we grow and from fifth grade to sixth grade math content. And it's like, see, I was like, I'm growing as a teacher. Like, you want this for other students. And so now when they walk by, they're like, can't wait to see what you're doing for the kids next and how you're going to be growing as a teacher. I was like, oh, my teacher heart. I love that.
That is so sweet. And I think like, yeah, like that's like I was saying earlier, like I do things, I even tell students like, this is a subject that I don't have as much experience in, or like this concept took me a long time to get. And I think that's a really good thing to share with students, because for some reason, students have this idea that teachers just are, and I'm not saying we're not super smart, but that you're super smart and that you know everything and that everything is easy for you. And that's just not true, especially with math. There are a lot of teachers who struggle even personally with math, or they struggle with teaching math, or they just struggle to get excited about math because it's not their thing. It's not their main thing. And I hope that from this podcast that you hear that it doesn't have to be your main passion. Like, I mean, there are so many awesome things to be passionate about and excited for, but my hope is that at least you can get out over the, this sucks phase, and just like actually enjoy it. And I think when you make it more fun and engaging for your students, you do that for yourself as well. It makes it more fun. So, okay, so you started your store. So when did you start your store? Did you start it over the summer?
I did start it over summer. It was several years ago. I'm trying to remember the last time I looked, because I was like, I don't even remember when I started my store, because I felt like it was something that was so on the back burner that I started it and then I never put anything on it. And then I started adding a couple things to it a couple years into my teaching. I think it was 2017 that I actually started it, because I would have graduated from college in 16. I think it started in 17, didn't put anything on it probably until 19, and then got serious about it in March or April of this year. And that's when I started doing it. And now I have a little over 30 products, I think the last time I have. So it's definitely something that started small and is growing, but I'm very happy with the growth that has happened, because one, growth in general is great. But talking about from just connecting with those community partners, and then going on Instagram, connecting with the teacher community there, and then joining Thriving Teacher Academy, I felt like if we were talking from a sales standpoint, my sales have definitely increased 95, almost 100% compared to the nothing that I had before to the little bit of something that I have now. And I expect even more growth over the next couple of years as I start to actually, take it seriously as my little side hustle that I got going on. And because I'm actually taking time for me to have that creative outlet, like I said before, where it's been one of those things I look forward to doing, that 1 or 2 hours, a couple of nights a week, where I'm able to sit down and do that kind of planning. That's something that I look forward to. And so being able to look forward to something that you get to do, which also provides you, with a little bit of a side hustle, I think that's great that you can go and do that.
I think that's so cool. And I'm a big fan of using business, entrepreneurship, and personal like financial literacy to teach students. I'll even when I discover something, like when we did a lemonade stand hot chocolate project not last year, COVID. Okay. The year before that. And so we talked about, like, we looked at signs, and I actually would show them, like, this is I showed them like my first little banners I made to the ones I've made now. And they're like, okay, the other ones were ugly. And I'm like, they were ugly, like straight up they were. And so but it's good. I want students to see that, because I don't want them to also assume that they're going to get everything 100% correct, or it's going to be great on the first go. Honestly, it probably won't be. And if you just expect that it won't be, then that's okay. You're going to be willing to be like, okay, I'm gonna have to put work into this. And I think that's such a good lesson for kids to have. And I think, like, anyone who's listening, I think it's so good for you to share. It's totally your choice, but I think it's good to share personal things that you're doing too, to show them that you're a multidimensional person, that you have other passions, and also like they'll know. I mean, they'll know from interacting with you, but they'll know how passionate you are about teaching and education when you say, even when I'm not teaching, I'm committed to creating resources to help other teachers and therefore other students. Like what a privilege, and I feel like your students just must love having you and having the classroom with you. So my last big question for you is, which resource that you've created so far are you most proud of? Like if you could have all of the teachers who follow you, or like who would follow you, get one resource to help them to make their life easier, which one would it be?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, new trend that students have been having, and I'm sure everyone has seen it, the poppets, the bubble poppers, like whatever you call them, that has been something that has been life changing for me. Other teachers are like, yes, it's been life changing for me, where I have to take away 50 of them from students. They're the ones that are as big as their backpack, kind of thing. Um, that's something that I found was what some my gateway to some of those students. And so I sat down this summer and I actually wrote a book of how to use puppets in the math classroom, because I feel like when you come across like a resource that's so versatile, different ways that you can use it, I feel like you should jump on that. And then if kids are like excited about it, I think that's good. You could do that with lots of different things. But I found out how to use it with place value. That was like a really big thing. You can use puppets with multiplying and dividing. I found ways to do that. I found ways to use it in non-math traditional ways, and I put some of those in there too, like one as simple as using those little 3x3 ones and having your class sit down and you maybe have some questions up on the board. Push A in the first line if that's going to be your answer for A, B, or C. And so, just having that like tactile kind of activity in there. And so this was the work of love that I really put a lot of work into. It got my creative outlet going, where I learned how to take pictures and stuff like that for them. And it was my first, where I felt like it was the book. It was like the first book, like my creating authentic experience ones I had. And I was like, okay, it's lots of good tips that are in here to help create those experiences. And then I got to my pilot one. I was like, this looks like a book. I was so proud of it. And I remember I completed it on the night of my anniversary, like right at midnight. And I was like, that's a gift to me that I got it done. And I was so excited about it. And I remember going in, and because my kids before, and our sixth graders now knew how much I wanted to start using those in the classroom. And I showed it. I was like, oh, look, it's done. I was so excited about it. And there were like other teachers that were excited about it that knew I was working on that too. And I felt like it became like this community thing where it was like, we're all rooting for this to be coming out. And so I feel like that's the one that I've been the most proud of. And now I'm doing like, more of those authentic experiences, like with the Starbucks stuff, I'm getting like little pieces out there. And I feel like once I have all of it put together, finally, like right now, I'm just kind of releasing little pieces and seeing what people are thinking about it and getting feedback from some other sellers as well. I was like, once all that comes up, that will be my new baby that I have. And I can't wait to see what the next one is, and excited to, have more of that student input and, figure out what my next community partner is going to be. And, I've got lots of different things that I've done in the classroom that aren't necessarily on Teachers Pay Teachers yet. It's making sure that I can put it out there, and it's not just my chicken scratch that I have or my own language that I can kind of read on there. I'm making it so it's easy for other teachers to be able to go on and have this sigh of relief when they have that resources, like everything's taken care of, everything's done. I can be able to provide those experiences for my students because it's there, it's done.
That is awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I can just tell your passion comes through. And I agree. Yeah, if something is kind of bothering you, like make it work for you, right? I think puppets, I can totally get why they're annoying to teachers. But yeah, I mean, if they're excited about them, they're an awesome manipulative. I mean, I've seen a teacher use them for math facts practice, which is awesome, which makes sense because it's a grid. So yeah, so much you can do there. Love it.
Yes.
So
So nice.
that's pretty much all I have for questions, but I just want to ask in closing, is there anything else? Like if you could just have, if a teacher's listening to this and they're feeling discouraged with teaching math, and they're just kind of feeling like overwhelmed with the idea of it, they still feel like they're not really a math person, what would be one thing that you'd want to like impart or share with them?
I would say and I want to make sure that I get this right because I feel like this is like the big moment up to this. I would say that if you're going into your classroom and you're feeling like you're really struggling with teaching math, that it's, maybe new to you this year, or maybe you've been doing it for a couple years and you just feel stuck, I would say go into your classroom and say to yourself, I'm going to take the content that I'm teaching today and I'm going to make sure that I enjoy it, because if the students see that I'm enjoying it, then they're going to enjoy it. And I feel like that's so important for the students to see that you're enjoying what you're teaching. And I would also say that it's okay to feel stuck sometimes, and it's okay to reach out to other teachers in your building, or even finding different communities, whether it's online or through books or, professional development that you do. It's okay to feel stuck and to try new things in your classroom. I can't tell you how many times I've tried something new in my classroom and it did not work out, or I think it was going well, and I'd look at a student, they're like, I don't think this is going. So being flexible with what you're doing in your classroom, and making sure that with your students that you're both enjoying that experience is super important. Being transparent, as being a teacher and being with your students, like there's so many different ways to teach. There's so many different ways to teach, and there's so many different ways to be successful in your classroom. And I think that if you really just go back to the basics and say to yourself, as long as I'm enjoying it, my students are enjoying it, that's all I can really ask for. I think that's super important. And I would say that's what drives my teaching passion here. And I think that's what drives my students coming into my classroom and being excited. I just love what I do. And as long as I'm loving what I'm doing, my kids are getting that. And that feedback is what drives me as a teacher, for sure.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I totally agree. Like if all else fails, have fun. That's kind of like my motto in life anyway. But yeah, if you're not having fun, if the energy's not there, this is gonna sound woo-woo, but it's really not. But so much of teaching is energetic. It really is. Kids are very intuitive. They can read faces and emotions very well. They know if you're not having a good time. And I'm not saying like force yourself to smile through it, but just remember that like what you're doing is so important, and that we really do have the choice every day. I would even say moment to moment. If you're not feeling it right now, take 5 minutes, reset, and then try again, because it's.
And I've done that.
Yeah.
I said, all right, we're gonna pause here. We're gonna do this activity. We're just kind of like calm down. You can even do like not even necessarily math, but like mindfulness activity or something like that. And just taking that break, or even having that reflection piece where you're sitting and talking about, okay, as a teacher, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm feeling as about myself and what I'm seeing with the students, and them having that dialogue with you, being able to feel like they're a part of what builds that classroom, what drives the classroom, what you're doing that day is super important as well, because their feedback is really insightful, because they're the ones that are sitting there day after day, and they know what's going to work for them and what's going to work for a lot of other kids in their classroom as well, because they've been with them for so long. Bringing that student component in and listening to what they have to say is super important.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you were able to make it, that we found the time. Thank you so much for coming on. And I just want to thank you all for listening. And if you're not already, definitely go follow Lauren. Lauren, do you want to say your Instagram handle? Just make sure.
Sure. I'm at Managing Middle Math. So it's all lowercase, all one word, no spaces, no dashes or anything like that. But feel free to come follow me on it at Managing Middle Math. It's the same name for my teacher's page. Same name for my email at gmail.com. So I'm managingmiddlemath@gmail.com. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to connect with you, be able to spark some discussions, because I'm always about building that growth for myself. I'm only my 6th year teaching. So if you have some cool ideas and different things that you can help me learn and grow as a teacher, I'm all about that as well.
I love that. And that's exactly what I think of this. I think of this like as a legit PLC where you get to choose who you talk to and hear from. So thank you so much, Lauren.
Yes, thank you for having me. I was so excited to be on here.
Yay, I'm glad.